Chapter 8. Go to School. When I started middle school at Hampton Public, I had already been to 5 or 6 other schools at least, and this whole program was getting old. Why the hell can't I just go back to my old school where I at least had a few months in and a friend or two? What's really bad about changing schools all the time is not just the social element that's hard on a kid, I mean really hard, but you're also completely dumped into a new class, a new teacher, and where the class is in a brand new book again that you've never seen before, and the child's expected to fall in with the rest of the class. To turn in the same homework, have the same comprehension and understanding of what's going on as everyone else in the class. You couldn't fit another F on my report cards, and I could have cared less. I was so goddamn tired of the whole thing, I was an inch away from forgetting all about this school thing. Let them come and get me. Let the police come. Who cares? What are they going to do? Give me a ride to school? On the upswing, at least this time, I was able to start school on the first day of school when it seemed to be a little easier to mesh in. Here I was sitting at my desk at the new school, and there was this kid sitting right next to me. He had a row of pencils stuck up in the sleeve of his sweatshirt. I guess so he had a full selection at the ready. He turned and looked at me and said, "Are you new too?" I said, "Yeah." He told me we better stick together so we don't get our asses kicked. I said, "Yeah, I guess so." Geez Louise, this looked like the sweetest little cream puff school I'd ever been to. But hey, you can't be too safe. His name was George. I think he had moved to Hampton from New York, maybe Long Island. We became friends. His family had opened up a funeral home in town, and a pretty nice one at that. Once in a while, we would go down to the funeral home and go inside. There were really cool lights and sofas in there. I thought this would be a really cool place to bring girls and have a party. No dice on that one. Once George led me to a back room where there was a long stainless steel table, what looked like surgical instruments, a sink, and an odd-looking contraption that was kind of like a spherical tank and was plugged into the wall, with a flexible hose that ran to it. There was some kind of remnants of a fluid inside. I asked him, "What is that?" He said it's for embalming fluid. Embalming fluid goes in there, then gets pumped into the body. Oh, I wasn't really familiar with how the whole funeral process works. It was a lesson to me. I had no idea that it was a one-stop shop, that the body would be prepared for the funeral and the funeral held in the same place. I don't know if that's always the case, but nonetheless, it was an educational experience. I'd say the most education I was interested in that year. When the school year came to an end, and I completed my summer school so I could pass and go on to high school, it was now time to go to Voorhees High School. Voorhees was a pretty big school, and a really nice one. I soon found out you had to be up out of bed much earlier to catch the bus on time. Also, by being up earlier, it was also much colder in the morning as the sun was just beginning to rise and light the way for me to cross the train tracks to my bus stop. At the bus stop were some familiar faces from grade school, one of them George, and a few new ones. There were 2 twin boys, Bruce and Brian, who I guess may have been in a different grammar school prior. Those 2 were quite a pair, not quite identical, the most differentiated set of twins I've ever met. One was a straight-laced, seemingly good-natured, accomplished wrestler. The other was a cigarette-smoking, sit-in-the-back-of-the-school bus type like myself. On our bus route, shortly after our stop, were a group of older students that harassed the new kids a bit. There were about 4 or 5 of them. "What's your name, jerkweed? You got a problem?" The usual you might expect, nothing too terrible. But one thing about these guys, they were rednecks. Yes, New Jersey has rednecks. These guys wore boots and flannels long before Kurt Cobain. They were deer hunters as well, bow hunters, something I wasn't familiar with at all. When they got to me looking to pick on a new face and said, "Hey, jerk-off, what's your problem? What's your name, Dick?" I said, "My name's not Dick, it's Fred Bear," looking out the bus window hoping this wouldn't last long. They said, "What?" They looked at me with astonishment. "Fred Bear? Ha, yeah, right, your name's not Fred Bear." I held up my school stuff with my name written all over everything. "Holy shit," one said. "Your name is Fred Bear." He yelled to a couple more to come to the back of the bus. "Hey, his name is Fred Bear." "Fred Bear? Do you know who Fred Bear is?" I told them I didn't know any other Fred Bear but myself. One kid said he invented the bow and arrow. Another jumped in and corrected him, saying no, he perfected the bow and arrow. They talked and debated a couple of points, like Fred Bear was this, Fred Bear did that. Looked like he was quite a hero to these bow hunting kids. And as it turned out, he's a hero to many hunters. He was one of the most famous hunters that ever lived, and boy was I grateful. Ted Nugent even wrote a song called Fred Bear. Who would have known? They never bothered me again after that. Sometimes I'd even get an introduction on the bus or in the school hall. "Hey, look, it's Fred Bear." Yep, that's me. I've yet to shoot an arrow with a bow for the record, but I like my guns. Lack of attendance, no work or homework complete, never took a book home, and if I did nothing in the 8th grade, I prepped for a whole new level of doing nothing in the ninth. The only thing I did well in school was art. My art teacher recommended me to attend an advanced art program at North Hunterdon High School in the afternoons. I would get bused there after traditional education at Voorhees in the morning. Really, all I had to do was keep my basic school classes at a passing grade, and I could have easily had an art scholarship on Easy Street. But at my last point in school in the ninth grade, I could only add and subtract with very little multiplication, like 2 times 10. I didn't know how to divide, I didn't get fractions or decimals. English, history, and so on, same thing. After a while, when I did go to school, I would sleep at the desk. Then I would go to the smoking area. Sometimes I didn't even leave the smoking area if there were enough kids around to bum cigarettes off of. There was no point in me being there. I wouldn't even try, and soon I would only show up once or twice a week. On one particular school day, I decided to cut, being there would be no one at my house on that particular day. I invited a small gang to cut with me and come to my house, and we'll party or something. We got one of our regular guys to get some beer for us and brought it to my house. The guy that got the beer was maybe 19 and had been grandfathered into the legal drinking age, being he was already 18 when the law was changed to 21. I think that's how it worked. In any case, he decided to stay at my house and drink up with us kids. About half through the day, wouldn't you know it, a police car, along with a truant officer squad car as well, came screaming up to the front of my house, slammed on the brakes, and came running to my front door, pounding the hell out of it. "Open up! Open up!" By that time, everyone was cleared out except for me. One sight of a police car and it was immediate scat, every man for themselves. Being I lived directly alongside of the tree-lined train tracks, it was pretty certain no one was ever caught on foot, ever. I dropped to my knees, closed the front door, and locked it as quietly as I could. As they were pounding on the door and the windows, I could just barely make out the cop and the truant officer lady looking in the front window. I heard them say something about running out of the back door. Oh shit. I crawled fast and low to the back door and it was still open from the kids making a run for it. I pulled it shut and locked it also before they came around the corner of the house. I quick low crawled to my bedroom where I'd have some stuff to hide behind like a bed. When I got to my bedroom, I discovered someone had leaped clean out of the window and neglected to open the screen first. Now the cop and the truant officer were standing outside the window alongside the broken out screen and window parts laying on the ground. They were actually poking their heads in the window. I kept low and hidden just a couple feet away under my bed, listening to them talk. They concluded that we all took to the tracks and were long gone. Once they were gone, I slipped out to the front and made sure they had pulled away. That was the first and last time I had ever seen a truant officer. I didn't know they actually still existed. It looked just like a police vehicle, like a Crown Vic with police lights on top and said truant officer on the side door. No sooner they were gone, a frantic knock was at the back door. It was Conrad trying to get back in before he was spotted. Soon all the other kids started to filter back in one by one from the train tracks. We would let one in, relock the door, let another in, relock the door, and continued on with the party, only now with the doors locked and a sharp lookout. I went to my bedroom closet and opened up the hatch in the floor that led to the crawl space under the house. I announced that no one run, no jumping out of windows. If they come back, just jump down the hole and we'll wait them out. We even placed the beer right next to the hatch door, so if we needed to duck out, we could take the beer down with us and drink quietly while we hide. Oddly enough, I never heard anything about it afterward. There were no further visits, no letters in the mail. No one ever stopped us on foot about it. Did they give up that easily? I'm not sure. I was told, however, by one of the 2 or 3 Hampton police, that they aren't paid nearly enough to chase kids through the woods. Well, that's good to know because we sure would give them a lot of invitations to do so. I thought I would relieve myself from attending high school for a while by getting caught doing some bad things like breaking into some lockers, ripping down some ceiling tiles in the hall. I got caught and was expecting to be suspended as planned. I was. And I got to be a part of something new. In-school suspension. You've got to be joking me. In-school suspension? I thought I'd legally be allowed to stay home for a week or 2, with regular old suspension. Who ever heard of in-school suspension? That's not suspension. Holy rip-off. So I reported the in-school suspension, when I did go to school, for maybe a week. And then another soon after, and another. They wouldn't budge on this in-school suspension. The longest days I've ever had. You sat in a regular plastic school chair with the desk fixed to it and stayed there. During my incarceration, I earned quite a reputation as being a wild, clown, funny kind of idiot during my stay. I'd be so bored I would pretend to do things like vomit in a garbage can, begging the teacher to release me. I loved that the kids would laugh at me, so I did things like that all the time. One day, a friend of mine from town, Frank, who happened to live next door to Ed, ended up being suspended in school also. When he sat down in his chair, I put a thumbtack under his butt. He jumped up and shouted, "It's in me! It's in me!" That got some good laughs. The teacher immediately looked at me, so I told her it wasn't me. Hey, I found one in my chair too. Someone's poor idea of a joke, I guess. More laughs. I actually found out I really like to be funny. I might as well have taken a bow at the end of every day to the 5 or 10 kids stuck in there with me. A lot of them thanked me for being the only thing that took their mind off being locked up in a room all day. One day, not so funny, I was summoned to the principal's office. I actually had no idea who the principal was. I was told by the school secretary to go ahead and have a seat in the office. He'll be right in. He finally arrived, walked in behind me, and before I could ask why I was there, he told me I smelled like a smokestack. Sitting down at his desk, he looked at the papers in front of him and asked, "Your name is Fred Bear? Do you know who Fred Bear is?" "Yes, I know." He told me it was ridiculous of me to keep coming to school, and when I did, only to sit in infinite suspension. I agreed. Why would you repeat the same day, every week, month, and for the rest of your life? "This is ridiculous and a waste of school money and resources," he said. He didn't let me speak much, and he definitely seemed like a hard-nosed principal. I thought, I guess he just doesn't get it. Like there was anything to get. He asked if there was anything I'd like to do. Any interest, something, anything. I told him, well, I play the drums. He looked up at me with raised eyebrows. "Oh, really? That's great. I make an extra $600 a week playing the drums in my own jazz band." "What? This guy in this suit right here is a paid drummer? What the hell?" He was telling me the truth and speaking sincerely. His name was Cecil Beavers. And before that, I never noticed that there were actually sometimes signs on highways and outside clubs in Central Jersey that said, "Tonight, the Cecil Beavers Band." Holy cow. He encouraged me to follow through with it. Pursue it, because it's not pursuing me, and there weren't any drums available to you in school suspension. Just go do it. Wow, $600 a week. He also told me it was silly that I show up to school when I couldn't answer his question, "Why do you come to school?" He recommended I try an alternative school called Stride. It was closer to my house, not as much will be expected of me, and if I wanted, he could arrange it. I agreed. That was it. I didn't even go get what little I had in my locker. When I walked out of his office, I kept on walking, right out the door, to the highway, and started hitchhiking. That was the last time I would ever see the inside of Voorhees High School. It lasted about 2 months. My new school was indeed closer to my house, but there was no bus for me, so it was actually about a 4-mile walk. And I'm talking about a freezing wind chill 4 miles that would have my insides solidified, frozen by the time I got there. The school was called Stride. It was located in an old church building across Route 31 in Glen Gardner, New Jersey. When I walked in for the first time, I saw a ton of familiar faces, all with their own stories and reasons for being there. There were maybe 20 kids, give or take. There was a kitchen break room for smoking and lunch if you brought either with you, a basketball court upstairs, and a main study room. There were drugs in the school. More than once I knew of a couple kids tripping on acid right in school. Some would do cocaine and methamphetamines right in the bathroom on a regular basis. The teachers there were kind of like counselors. There were 2 of them, Angelo and Jeff. Both were hell of nice guys. Angelo was like the senior teacher counselor of the 2. He was a big guy and decent on the basketball court. He would shake his head at me every time I fell for his fake shot, setting me up to jump and block air, then taking the shot at his leisure on my way back down. Over and over I would fall for it, but well, I guess I wouldn't be there if I was all that smart. I was starting to really sprout and was well over 6 feet by then. I could never outmuscle him on the court, but I was learning to block and shoot effectively. While I was at Stride, I also developed a hell of a hook shot I took up from watching one of my heroes, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned Angelo's fake out from him and used it quite often on my own opponents. Pretty slick. But outside of the indoor Stride court and the blacktop court in town for a short while, I really didn't play that much. In fact, outside of that, I wasn't interested in organized sports. In attending Stride, I really didn't do much more than any other school before. I didn't show up much. I didn't care to learn anything or get a passing grade in anything. When I did attend school, it was the same pointless routine, only now I was walking long distance in the freezing cold. Angelo told me I was a bum. He was right. Somewhere I had gotten hold of a better winter coat than I had been wearing. The one I had was torn and was too small for my recent growth spurt. My new coat was a decent coat. It was used, but it was reasonably clean, and it fit, and didn't have any holes or tears in it. When I first walked into Stride wearing it, Angelo looked at me and noticing my coat said, "Nice coat, for a bum." I never got mad that he called me a bum. It kind of felt like he meant it as challenging me not to be a bum. But my Stride days were numbered. I called it quits, and I was done. One day I just never went back. A few months of 9th grade, but out of all the teachers, I liked Angelo. I still remember him well. He was one of the good ones.